Okay, we're live. I should be able to see this. Okay, Barry, we are live. Ask a Therapist Thursday here at Recovery Unplugged Fort Lauderdale with my good friend and your good friend, Dr. Barry Ryman.
Hello, hello.
So what we're going to do is we're going to take questions from you guys. I'm going to let Barry introduce himself and talk a little bit about this whole pandemic and what it means to us here and what it means to him, and then we'll go ahead and I'll monitor this for questions and we'll take them as they come up. So go ahead, Barry.
Fantastic. Hi, guys. Dr. Barry here. First of all, I just want to say, excuse the hair, no barbers are open. So doing the best with what I have, but I'm bringing the afro back. So I'm sure other people can relate to that. It also feels good to actually be out of the house and around human adult interaction, which is pretty cool. Thanks, Carl, for joining me tonight. It feels good to actually be here on stage.
With another person.
With another person, yeah, the human interaction,
Yeah.
which is like, I think something that the majority of us are sorely missing, and the only thing as I can describe is I feel as if we're living in the Twilight Zone. So, with that being said, for the newly recovering addicts that are at home and are somewhat isolated, the hope for tonight is to be able to, chime in, ask any questions you might have, and hopefully, we can give you some feedback or some sound advice to help you navigate this uncertain time. So thanks for having me.
Tammy says hello. Tammy DeRider.
Hello, Tammy.
So why don't you talk a little bit about maybe anxiety and how that's playing a role in this whole thing? We can start with that.
I think I'm a little too nervous to discuss that. You have any other question? All right. So, anxiety. Throw some a little reactions if you struggle with anxiety. I think the majority of us, have some sort of anxious tendencies. I can only speak to what I would imagine is probably some people that are tuning in right now are or have been afflicted in active addiction. And for what I know, the way I dealt with my anxiety, in active addiction is I self-medicated. And what I found was once I, came into recovery and surrendered, I had to learn alternative ways to deal with anxiety. My head, just like many other people's heads, tends to always go to worst case scenario, right? So, this virus is going to wipe out our entire nation and the world as we know it is gone and we're never going to recover from this. What I find is what occurs in my head doesn't usually happen in real life. And I think that there's ways for all of us to kind of stay centered. And what are some, techniques that we can utilize to reduce anxiety? Well, one would be exercise, right? For me, I have been doing push-ups and dips in my house. I haven't really ventured outside for a run in a while, but that would be something else I would recommend. A nice long hot shower is something we can do to reduce anxiety. Phoning a friend, FaceTiming a friend, getting on a Zoom call with multiple friends. It's really important to keep that line of communication open with others. you don't want to feel disconnected, right? So feeling disconnected at a time like this could be devastating for a lot of us, because a big trigger for relapse is A, isolation, B, boredom, C, anxiety, D, depression, and if we don't stay vigilant, and if we don't continue to connect with others, while we're quarantining in place, we run the risk of, going back to old behaviors. So,
indeed. Talk a little bit about self-care and what that looks like for you in a time like this, other than the exercise stuff.
Yeah, I think I just mentioned, for me, it's still talking to my sponsor as often as possible. It's still communicating with my family. For me, it's spending time with my daughters, right? So my daughters and I get to play together. They're 8 and 6 years old. So that's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because that can lead to joy and anxiety at the same time. But there's, as much as we can keep our routine as normal as possible, close to what it was prior, the better off we're going to be. I'm blessed to still have a job and work from home. So that definitely keeps me busy throughout the day for the most part. I mentioned exercise, even if it's not a high intensity exercise, but actually going out for a walk, just to get some fresh air and to, clear your head. And again, I can't emphasize enough, for self-care, don't bottle things up, right? Speak to others, talk about how you're feeling, understand that no matter what you're feeling, somebody else is feeling the same thing and you're not alone.
Excellent point, Barry. So, if you're just joining us, this is Ask a Therapist Thursday. If you guys out there have any questions for Dr. Barry, shoot them in the comments section if you're on Facebook or if you're on YouTube Live, and we will attempt to answer those. Barry will attempt to answer those himself. Talk about what this means, like from a treatment perspective here at Recovery Unplugged, and what we're doing, maybe.
Wow. So obviously, and if there's anybody else who's watching that's in the treatment industry, you've heard of all the different changes that are going on with treatment centers, right? Protecting our clients is of the utmost importance. Some of the adjustments that we've made on the site of treatment is our intensive outpatient groups are now being done over telehealth, right? So the clients are not actually coming to the center for intensive outpatient. We have started to limit the number of admissions we take in based on geographic locations they're coming from in the country. Unfortunately, at this time, we're not admitting clients from New York or New Jersey, as that seems to be the hot spot in the United States. And we are able to refer to local providers there if anybody does contact us. The disinfecting, the cleaning, all the things that go on at the actual treatment center has been stepped up tenfold. We are no longer allowing visitors into our facility, no tours of any other representatives of other facilities that would normally come into our facility are not being allowed in, and any client who is scheduled to come into our facility before being approved, they must get on the phone with our physician. So a shout out to all of our MDs for getting on the phone at all hours of the day and all hours of the day and night, that are there to speak with the clients and do a COVID-19 screening, making sure that they're not coughing, they don't have any fever, they haven't traveled anywhere in the last 14 days outside of the country, asking them who they've been around for the last 2 weeks. And these are just different ways to protect the current clients that we have.
Great. Talk a little bit about, I think some people are struggling with the idea of Zoom meetings versus regular meetings. Maybe you can address that.
Sure. I've actually done a couple of, Zoom 12-step meetings. My fellowship happens to be NA, and it was different. It was definitely helpful. I think it's important, especially for people who are early in recovery. Maybe they're doing a 90 and 90. I think this is a perfect way to supplement, the in-person meetings. I do feel a little bad for people who are just being introduced to recovery right now, because in my opinion, there's really nothing like an in-person meeting. I don't think that's something that can really be substituted. getting a hug from somebody, feeling welcome, feeling the vibe, reading the body language. However, we're making do with what we have. Obviously, Zoom meetings or intherooms.com, places like that are better than having no meetings at all.
Sure, agreed. With all this maybe doom and gloom that some of us are feeling surrounding this, what are some other things that you can think of for people to do or not do that can improve their mental health?
Well, okay, so this is a tough one, right? Stay home. If you don't have to be out, listen, that doesn't mean that, you can never go to the grocery store, you can't show up at a doctor's for a doctor's appointment, or you shouldn't be putting gas in your car, or you shouldn't run to a convenience store. But for the most part, do your best to contribute to the community at this point where this pandemic can maybe pass a little bit faster. They talk about flattening the curve. And that curve has continued to rise, right, tremendously. And we look at the amount of, just in New York alone, I believe the number was like 90-something thousand people who have tested positive for COVID-19. That's more than China.
Yeah.
Just in New York.
Just in New York.
So I think that, that's crazy. That's crazy. And it shows us, that unless we want New York to repeat itself across the country, we really have to do our part to kind of flatten that curve a little bit.
Yeah. There's a natural tendency for addicts and alcoholics in recovery to maybe be a little bit rebellious and maybe think that the rules might not apply to them, right? But we sort of got to go with the flow on this for the good of everybody. Yeah.
And I agree with you, man. We're crafty individuals that rules typically don't apply to. And I think that's ingrained somewhere in our nature. But at this point, look, we're all living a time right now that will be discussed in history books, right? I don't think we realize, we are living a time right now as a world, not even as a nation, but as a world that not one person on this planet has ever experienced before. If you think about the last pandemic, right, it was the Spanish flu, which was in 1918. For someone to have lived through the Spanish flu, today they'd be about 102 years old.
Right.
And even if they are 102 years old today, unless they're 108 years old, they don't have any recollection of what life was like during that pandemic.
Right.
You understand? So I think that we have to realize the severity of what's going on at this point and really do our best to concede to, what, I don't want to say what the government is telling us, but, we have to do our part.
We do. We do. How's the social distancing affecting you?
Well, I wanted to sit on your lap today, and, we're about 6 feet apart right now.
We are.
Like I mentioned before, I'm an NA guy, so I'm a hugger by nature. And, this has been difficult, just giving elbow taps. And honestly, at this point, I'm really just grateful to be around another adult human being.
Yeah.
Right? But what's the concept behind the social distancing? Right? I went to Publix yesterday to do some grocery shopping, and on the floor, they had blue painter's tape that was 6 feet apart. So when I went to go check out at the register, I had to stand behind the line, and then the person behind me had to stand behind their line. And obviously the concept is not so much for us not to catch something from others, but from us, if we're infected and don't even know it, to spread it to others. Right? I was watching the news last night, and it talked about, why we wear a mask. And I have my mask here. It's just not comfortable, doing this whole thing. And we're far enough apart right now where I'm okay with this. But, we have a mask on to not infect others, not to prevent ourselves from being affected by others.
Yeah. I think Tiffany's got a question out there, but she's asking, where am I
Is that
supposed to
Tiffany
ask?
Z?
It's Tiffany Z. It's our good friend Tiffany Z.
She is a miracle.
She is a miracle. Tiffany, you can shoot a question in the comments and I will see you comment. Yeah, okay. So she's really struggling with recovery in life in general. She's tired of trying to act strong for other people. feels really defeated. So her question is, how are you coping with all of this? And how do you, I guess, get through that feeling of defeated and not feeling strong?
Love that question.
That's a great
And
question, Tiffany.
thanks for asking, Tiffany. Good to see you. Well, I can't see you, but what I'll say is what you're feeling, a lot of people are feeling. And you don't have to be strong for everybody at this point. At this point right now, I believe you have under a year clean or somewhere close to a year clean, if I remember right. And you really need to be strong for yourself right now. Self-care needs to be at the top of the priority list. That means making multiple phone calls a day to people in your sober support group, your sponsor, other women that are in your life. This means taking care of the physical self, right? So if you're all, stuck in the house, get out and go walk around a little bit. Every state that's on lockdown right now, you are allowed to go outside and exercise, right? You just don't want to be holding hands with somebody or hugging someone on your way as you're jogging, right? Get out and do something. Reach out like what you're doing right now, asking these questions. I think that we are all adjusting to life right now as we know it, which we don't even really know it, right? The way I've put it is I almost feel like I'm living in the Twilight Zone. Okay, when my conversations end today with, instead of how they used to end, like take care or I love you or good talking to you, all of my conversations now, even through social media, is stay safe, right? And when you hear stay safe, automatically we're riddled with anxiety because we're all walking around trying not to get sick. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense.
And then when you couple in the economy with it, and you have 6 million people who just filed for unemployment, and there's fear in the air, and someone might not have a job, and they can't get through to the unemployment line, or their PIN number isn't working. There's a lot of different stressors that are going on right now, but I think the most comforting thing you can take from this is you're not alone, and what you're feeling is accurate. You're allowed to be feeling what you're feeling, but also keep in mind that the way you're feeling right now may not be the way you're feeling in 20 minutes from now, or in 2 days from now, and definitely not 2 months from now.
Yeah.
So it's important to keep your eye on the prize, remember what your long-term goals are, and do not let anything derail you from the path that you've been walking for the last year or so.
I totally agree with that, Barry. Tiffany's going to hate me for saying this, but she needs to put that meditation into practice that we were doing here at the treatment center. I think meditation has been so helpful for me to get through this, quieting the mind away from the news and just settling down, clearing it out. Man.
Breathing exercises.
Correct, absolutely. Hannah says it's hard right now because there's only so much we can do at home. We feel like we don't have some outside purpose. Right now we can work on our inward purpose instead. I love that.
I mean, Hannah, that's great. Obviously, we're always encouraged to work on our inward purpose, and some of us just never do, right? Because we're so busy with the hustle and bustle of what's going on around us in our daily lives, in our jobs, and the meetings, and going out to eat, and being with friends, and, watching Netflix is not working on your inner purpose, right? Getting sucked into the Tiger King, although it's fun, is not working on your inner purpose. However, address your inner purpose and then do something fun. Play a game, do a puzzle, get on social media, binge on Netflix, check out for a little bit, talk to somebody, journal, right? I heard someone say the other day, and I wish I was doing this, and I never thought to do this, but they're literally journaling every single day to remember what's going on in the world at this moment. So in 40 years from now, they can share with their grandchildren what they went through.
Cool. Patrick's watching. We want to say hi to our friend Patrick. Our friend Adam is watching out there. Ashlyn says, I have the worst panic attacks at work. And I would imagine that's just stress over this whole thing, right? Anything she can do to help that?
Well, my question would be, prior to this pandemic, were you having these panic attacks at work? And see if she can respond, right? Or are these panic attacks something new? And also, what is it that you do for work? Is it work related why you're having these panic attacks? That's a tough question to answer without knowing a little bit more details.
We'll get back to her when that comes up. Jason Cabello is watching, our good friend Jason in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
And Tiffany says, Ash, I totally feel that, but on the opposite side of it, she's had so many panic attacks being out of work. She never realized how much her job was actually a coping skill. This is a great topic because a lot of our friends out here don't have jobs. All of my musician friends, every single last one of them is screwed. Totally screwed. Out of work, confined to their house. It's hard to deal with the mental health stuff when you lose your job because of something like this, right?
100%. I mean, really dumb that down for a second. You lose your income, right? You lose your primary source of income, and when you lose your income, what enters right away? Fear.
Fear.
And when we're in fear, are we feeling good or are we feeling bad? Chances
Not
are
feeling good.
not feeling good.
Not feeling good.
And then for some of us who are new in recovery, when we're fearful and we don't feel good, what have we typically done in the past? We've self-medicated. Well, now we're not doing that. Well, what can we do, right? So this is where being close with a support group right now, continuing to talk about how you feel, recognizing that you're not alone, may bring you through this process until we become accustomed to living this life for the next month or two.
Absolutely. Our good friend Blake E. Cohen is watching.
Blakey.
And he says mindfulness plays such an important role in managing the anxiety that this illness has caused, and remember, we're in this together globally.
Yeah, I want him to kind of expand a little bit on what he means by mindfulness so he can kind of explain to the audience.
What would you like to define mindfulness as, Mr. Cohen? Also, Kirsten says, how can we support our family and friends who are in recovery at this time?
Great question, Kirsten. How do we support our family and friends who are in recovery? And I'm assuming if you're not in recovery, right? It's understanding that their mood swings may be a little bit more than usual. It's encouraging them to continue to communicate with their support group. It's encouraging them, with, not necessarily nudging them or nagging them, but encouraging them, to attend some of these online meetings as a way of continuing to connect for at least an hour a day that they're taking out of their day to connect with people who are in recovery. And then understanding, right, that this is a tough time for everybody. But for somebody who's new in recovery that may not have that tremendous support system early on and may not have all those coping skills that somebody with years, clean or sober has, that this is a really difficult time for them.
Great. Ash got back to us on that question, and she's saying she's a manager at a pizza place, and early recovery is there coming back up. She's got almost 18 months clean right now. The panic attacks are coming up when she thinks about it, and it's been the worst feeling.
Okay, so my guess would be that Ash is probably going to worst case scenario. Typically, when we have panic attacks, our mind always goes to the worst case scenario, right? And what do they say? 97% of the stuff that we worry about never ever comes true. So we spend all of that time worrying about what could be instead of learning to be in the day, right? So what I would recommend, Ash, is do whatever you can to stay in the present moment, especially when you're about to have a panic attack. Just say, I'm gonna make it through this minute, I'm gonna make it through the next 10 minutes, and then I'm gonna make it through an hour. And once I make it through that hour, chances are I'm gonna be feeling a little bit better than I was feeling the hour before. And do your best to recenter yourself back into the day.
Right. Blake says mindfulness in this case means not getting caught up in the what ifs or what might happen with your job, your family, etc. in the future, but recognize the reality of your situation currently and only deal with the problems that are current and real, like what you
Almost
just said.
exactly word
Right.
for word what I just explained to Ashley. Thank you for that, Blake. For those of you guys that don't know Blake Cohen, he is an author. He has a book on the family systems of addiction.
It's a great book. It's actually an Amazon bestseller.
It's called I Love You More.
It is.
Short stories. And
he said he's currently mindful that he loves us both.
and he is currently working as an interventionist and a kind of like a sober coach. So good person to know. Shoot him a request.
Hannah says this is where mindfulness helps. Absolutely, Hannah. You're absolutely right.
100%.
Let's see. What topic would you like to go to now? So, any advice to people that are really early in recovery, like they just got out of treatment, they might be in sober living watching this with, a group of other people that are pretty much locked into a house together?
Get to know each other, man.
Get to know each other, right?
Get to know each other, be real, be raw, be vulnerable, right? And just whatever you do, don't give in. Whatever you do. As bad as you may want to, as bad as your brain may go there, if you can literally physically feel it in your stomach, understand that if you don't give in to that urge, eventually that will pass, right? Those self-destructive thoughts will pass. For people like myself, and I've been in recovery now for almost 24 years, I can tell you that if life sucked and I wanted to get high every day of these past 24 years, I never would have stuck around. So just understand, no matter how bad you feel, no matter what you're going through, all of that stuff passes and you make it to the other side. Know that this situation itself with this pandemic that's going on, although it doesn't feel like it, is a very temporary situation in the grand scheme of things. When we compare this to a lifespan, I know it feels like forever, okay? We live in Florida, right? And I've lived in Florida my entire life. I was talking to somebody about this earlier today, actually another owner of a treatment center. And I said to him, I said, in Florida, we're used to having hurricanes. And we know when the hurricanes are coming. And we go to Publix and we buy all the water. And there's lines at the gas station. And you can't get bread and you can't get water. And all those things run out. Never really the toilet paper, though.
No.
Toilet paper's never been like a hurricane supply, which I find weird that what's going on right now. But anyways, so with a hurricane, we know that it's gonna suck, and more than likely we're gonna lose power. We're not gonna be reporting to our jobs. We're gonna have to board up our houses, or if you have the accordion shutters, great, you gotta do that. And you're gonna fill your bathtub with water. Right, in case you lose power, and you're just gonna ride it out, and there's fear associated with it. What if my roof blows off, and what if, all my trees get knocked down, or my car gets damaged, or all of these different things that go into living through a hurricane. But what we also know is we know that after 4, 5, 6, 7 days, life will start to go back to normal. Power gets restored. Water goes back on the shelves. You can get gas again without waiting for 2 hours in a gas station line, right? The issue with what we're going through right now, and this is, again, just my opinion, why I feel like this has been so hard to deal with for so many, is there's so much uncertainty that's involved with this pandemic. I don't think the majority of us, and I could be wrong, I don't think the majority of us are 1,000,000% fearful of actually getting sick with the virus. I think this is more about the uncertainty of how long is this going to last? Is my company that I work for going to sustain and make it through this? Is the economy going to recover? Is the stock market going to bounce back? When can I touch another human being, right? When do I not have to wear a mask in public? How freaking long is this going to go on? And I think that just that uncertainty can bring us to panic.
Absolutely. Ashlyn, you're very welcome. Guys, if you're out there and you have any questions, shoot a question in the comments, and we will ask Dr. Barry. It's Ask a Therapist Thursday here with Dr. Barry Ryman. Blake asks, and this is a great point too. Oh, before that, Hannah says, also understand your body reactions. Our bodies can trigger learned fear responses. That's a great point. Blake wants to know, is now a good time to learn or develop ourselves personally and professionally? Example, finding an online course or certification that can help us improve our lives once this passes, or certifications that can help us adapt our work towards online platforms. And what's up, Stoney?
Sure. I mean, again, Blake, I think it all depends on, what people have going on in their life right now. If they're one of those people that lost their job and they're literally just sitting at home watching Netflix, I couldn't think of a better time, right? There's certain people, and I want to give a shout out to all of our healthcare workers, right? Even people here at Recovery Unplugged that are still going in every single day to service those clients, right? You have doctors and nurses that work in hospitals and ICUs that are on the front lines. But for somebody who's just at home now, I read a week or two ago that Yale University, I believe it was Yale, was offering this free online course, which is one of their most popular courses they offer at the school. And you even get a certificate when you're, it's like an 8-week commitment, but it's totally free. And I know of a number of people who have enrolled in a course like that. Also, depending on what you do, this is a great time to, really start to focus on platforms like LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn is a very professional platform, that can help you expand your network while you have the attention of all these other people that are also at home on platforms like LinkedIn.
Yeah, I agree. AJ Morrow says Barry Ryman is the man. I love that guy. Carl, good lyrics to start a new song.
There we go, Carl. Let's get you involved in this.
Dude, this is a treasure trove of information that you can write music about. And speaking of that, one of the things that I've been doing is sort of developing my practice routine again, right? Because with all this extra time that I'm not, my self-care is playing music with friends out in public, and that's been totally taken from me. So for me, getting back into the practice thing is great. I can spend time learning my instrument better, improving my, kind of like what Blake was saying, it's not a certification, but it allows me to get better at what I do. Now that we have this extra time. I'll tell you, the people that I notice that are having the toughest time with this are the ones that are stuck in the couch watching the news all day. And those are actually the clients that I've been talking to that have been having the biggest struggle with this are the ones that have been watching the news and just like, oh my God, it's overwhelming all the time, saturated with these facts, figures, curves, flattens, this, that, the other thing. And it's like, man, it's overwhelming for anyone, right? Much less somebody in early recovery, yeah?
What about not having any sports to watch?
That's a big one too.
I mean,
that's a big one too.
Right? That's something that's not talked about too much, right? But at this point in time, Major League Baseball would be on, NBA basketball would be on. We're starting to look forward to training camp for the NFL, hockey, all these different, there are a lot of what we call sports fanatics, right, that have substituted one addiction for another, and now they're literally empty, right? So there's got to be ways to replace that passion, and it's important not to fall in the funk.
Totally. Paula just makes a great point. Turn off the TV and turn on some music.
Was that Paula Holdman?
It is.
Paula, we love you. Turn off the TV and turn on some music. Couldn't have said it any better myself.
Right. It ties into everything that we do here at Recovery Unplugged anyway.
Oh, music is a catalyst for change.
It is, and it's proven to help with anxiety, depression, all that stuff. It stimulates dopamine and serotonin in the brain, just like a drug would.
As long as it's music you like.
As long as it's music you like.
Right, not that depressing, boring. We won't mention any names, but.
Right. We won't mention any names. A lot of people commenting that that's their solution too. The go-to is music, right? Not surprising on a Recovery Unplugged.
That's a little weird, yeah. I can't believe people are actually commenting that.
Blake saw a piece on the news that it's...
We should have just invited Blake to the studio.
We should have. Blake, you have an invite for the next Ask a Therapist. Saw a piece on the news that it's an impossible time to get sober. Why is that not true?
Okay, so I was actually called last week by the Miami Herald, and they ran a story this weekend. I believe it came out on, I don't remember what day it came out. I think it might have come out yesterday. It was in the newspaper, and it talked about how this coronavirus is affecting people in recovery. And one of the things that we talked about is how important it is for people who are new in recovery to stay connected at any cost, right? whether it's being on the phone, whether it's FaceTime, whether it's over WhatsApp, whether it's Skype, whether it's Zoom, it's the online meetings. It is not impossible for people who are new in recovery to stay sober at this time, although that could be the perception.
Yeah. I think this is a good opportunity to find out what your program is made of. Something that Narcotics Anonymous says that I like a lot is like, no matter what,
Don't pick up.
don't pick up. Don't pick up. And it seems so simple, but in times like this, it's so important. Like, no matter what happens, the world could fall apart. The world can fall apart, and no matter what, you just don't pick up, right?
Then you got a shot.
And you got a shot. And it's at some level, I think you almost have to get to that point because things are going to happen in life all the time,
I mean,
like this, right?
What other choice do we have, right? Yes, it's a choice. To pick up right now, if you're in recovery, it's a choice, right? It doesn't happen on accident. You're not powerless at this point. If you're living in recovery right now, if you are currently clean, even if it's for one day, you are not powerless. You are empowered, right? And then if you're thinking about picking up, play that tape all the way through. Ask yourself, there was a movie, okay? This movie is called Dude, Where's My Car? Did you ever see that movie?
I've seen that movie, Barry.
Okay, so they're driving into a drive-through at a Chinese restaurant. Do you remember this scene?
I don't.
They pull up and they say, hello, I would like to place an order. And the woman says, how can I help you? And they said, well, we would like some fried rice. And she goes, and then? And some honey garlic chicken. And then? Okay, well, don't forget the fortune cookies. And then? That's coming from the drive-through little machine. And they said, and then you can put it in a bag because we're ready to eat. And she goes, and then? And he says, no, and then. And she goes, and then? No, and then. And then? No, and then. And then he says, listen, lady, if you say and then one more time, I'm going to stick my foot so far up that you're going to regret it. And the next thing you hear is, and then. Okay, and they pull up and they go nuts, right? How does that relate to what?
How does that
relate? Is that like the biggest veer off topic thing ever? No. If you think about getting high at this point, whether you have a week, a year, or 5 years, and then yourself. Okay, so you go cop, Carl. Let's play this out, right?
And
what's your drug of choice?
More.
Give me a.
Opiates.
Okay, so let's say you use, right?
Right.
Tell me about what happens right when you get it.
I use.
Okay, and then?
I use.
And then?
I use.
And then?
I use unless I'm getting arrested or.
And then?
I use.
And then?
I use.
And then?
I see what you did there, baby.
Play that tape all the way through. Where do you eventually end up?
At best, back in treatment.
Okay,
At
are
best.
you worse off at that point when we've then yourself to death than you were in the current situation with the feelings you had when you really wanted to get high?
Oh, by far better wanting to get high than
Okay, and what would have happened if you didn't act on that urge to self-destruct? How long do you think you would be feeling those feelings for?
It usually passes pretty quickly.
Maybe.
To be honest with you.
Even if it
Maybe
takes
not.
a day. Is this a feeling that's going to stick with you for the rest of your life should you stay clean? Absolutely not. No matter what you feel, no matter what you're going through at this moment, it will pass.
It will pass. Absolutely. That's the theory of impermanence.
And then?
And then.
And then.
Frank Parisi, your good buddy, says, does anyone else think if Napoleon Dynamite grew up, he would be Dr. Barry?
Frankie, I love you. Keep working out.
Hi, Mag. You have any questions for us, Maggie? Maggie's with us. You know, I forget exactly what I was going to say when you were saying this, but...
And then?
And then. This is really, you know... My program has to be so much more than meetings, and this is proving that to me. You know, this is just proving that, like, if I put all my faith and trust in meetings and people, then I'm probably going to have a lot rougher road of this recovery thing. You know, I haven't once. I mean, like, since this whole thing started, like, I'm worried about my parents because they're older and they're in New Jersey, so they're in the worst part of this. But not once has the idea occurred to me, like, boy, this is a really good time to go get fucked up. Not once has that thought come.
And more power to you. And, you know, I haven't thought about that either, right? I try to recreate ways to stay busy. Like I mentioned before, I'm still fortunate to, you know, work for an amazing company and be able to work from anywhere in the country, right? You know, part of my job is I travel a lot and I'm able to work from wherever I'm at. And not a lot of people can say that. And so for the people that are currently out of a job, I feel for you, but know it's going to pass. For the people who still have their job, but are stuck at home, know whatever you're feeling is going to pass and that we're all in this together, right?
Shannon makes a great point replying to Blake. That's an excuse if we go get high. If we want it bad enough and we have the tools, even a pandemic is no excuse for not getting sober.
What if we start to say, well, I don't want it anymore? Then what?
So in other words, we start saying, I don't want to be sober anymore?
Right.
That's a great question. Why don't you answer
What
it?
if the old bugaboos come in? I challenge you to think about what you would do in that scenario. I can share with you that when I got tossed into a detox and into a treatment center, I never, not even once, ever said I wanted to stop. And maybe that's a little bit different. You hear it said sometimes, you really have to want this to get it. I call BS. You hear people say, and here's the best thing ever, right? My worst day clean is better than my best day using. And I look at them like they have 6 you-know-what heads. Because if being out there at some point in your active addiction wasn't fun, we wouldn't have destroyed our lives in the process to continue doing it.
Right.
The point being that it doesn't matter what we want at this moment. If you bring the body, eventually the mind will follow. And what I mean by that is, we cannot, and this is something, you know, I say often, we cannot think ourselves into right acting. One of the things that we must learn to do is we must learn to act ourselves into right thinking. If you bring the body enough times, eventually the mind will follow. If those thoughts start to creep back in of maybe I don't want this anymore, maybe I'm better off using, you have to start and look at what it is that you have started to neglect in your recovery. What is it that you've started to not do? You know, if prayer was a part of your regimen on a daily basis, did you stop doing that? If reading your Just for Today meditation was a routine of yours, and did you stop doing that? If calling your sponsor was a routine, did you stop doing that? If making your bed was part of your recovery, did you stop doing that? And start to identify some of the things that you might have stopped doing that got you to the place where you're currently at.
I love that, man. Katie wants to know when you're going to get a haircut, Barry.
As soon as I can find a barber that takes people one at a time.
Right, socially distanced barber.
Yeah.
Hey, Missy, what's up? Good to see you out there. Hannah Garcia, my biggest fear right now, and this is just projecting into the future, that if this gets really bad, we might not have the emergency room response teams Narcaning like they were able to before.
Hang on, I just want to say that Katie actually found a nail salon that took people one person at a time.
Did she really?
Yeah, so if anybody out there has any tips on barbers,
Shoot him over here too, as Barry needs a
because
haircut.
I'm going to put up like a fundraiser where I just shave my head. Okay, say that one again.
I'll throw in the first $100 for that.
All right, say that comment again.
So, hey, Missy Spear, great to see you. Let's see. Her fear is that if this gets really bad, we might not have the emergency response teams Narcaning like they were able to before. And hey, Megan, good to see you. Hope you're playing music, Megan, by the way.
We may not have the emergency response teams that we're giving Narcan.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Legitimate. That's a
You know,
legitimate
that's a
point.
really legitimate point. Stock up on the Narcan. Obviously, you know, safety first. And, you know, if you are out there and you're currently getting high and you don't have any plans of surrendering anytime soon, make sure that you're not using alone, right? And I know this is an unpopular thing to talk about, right? But it's harm reduction. Don't be using by yourself. I just heard of 2 people that we lost that were actually using together, and they were both found deceased in a hotel room. So even using together doesn't guarantee safety, but if you are going to use, don't use alone and have Narcan.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I was thinking, before I really started to get serious about getting clean, Barry, I always had an excuse why I could go get high. If it wasn't the pandemic, it was the stuff that happened to me when I was a kid. It was, I'm in the music business, this is what we do. And eventually, I had to put down those calling cards of, like, this is why I'm able to be different than you, and this is why I'm able to get high, and these are my excuses for getting high.
I think they refer to that as terminal uniqueness.
They do indeed.
One of the things that I've noticed is clients these days, over the last couple weeks that have been coming into treatment, have been running out of those excuses of why they can't come into treatment. Oh, I gotta, be there for my parents. Well, no, your parents are over 65 years old and you shouldn't be around them. I have my job. Well, no, you don't have your job anymore, right? I'm in school. No, you're really not. All classes are canceled right now for so all of these excuses that we can come up with, in my experience, and I've worked in the industry now for the better part of 15 years, is I've never met a person who got 5 years clean that didn't say the best feeling ever was wondering where they would have been if they didn't surrender 5 years ago. And on the flip side, there is nothing worse with somebody attempting recovery 5 years ago, being on a 5-year run and wondering what your life would have been like should you had stayed clean, right? If we keep our eye on the prize, if we all in this audience can agree on, if you've been self-destructing, if you've been living a life in active addiction, if you've been tormenting your family members, if you've been stealing from your kids' piggy bank, if you've been fired from jobs, if you've had losses of relationships, all as a direct result of your active addiction, and you were to stop right now, can we all agree that in 5 years from now, should you stay sober, you will be in a better place than you would be if you use for the next 5 years? If we keep that in mind, if we look at our long-term goals and understand the importance of delayed gratification versus instant gratification, anybody can do this. Anyone. I was as sick as they come. I'm 6'3". I was 140 pounds soaking wet when I got thrown into a detox facility. In a million years, never wanted it, never thought I could be where I'm at today. And this journey has been, I don't even want to say magical, it's been a ride.
Ups, downs, in between.
Listen, being in recovery doesn't protect you from living life, right? Life still happens, relationships end, you lose jobs, you lose your money, you get money, people die, like all these things in life happen. But what recovery has given me, at least, is the coping skills to deal with the stuff when life happens.
Great point, Barry. Life beyond our wildest dreams, Missy. You got that right. Absolutely. Can you talk maybe a little bit about some of the resources that might be out there if you're struggling? Because I know, we're definitely here at Recovery Unplugged for you. We're open, we're accepting clients. If you're struggling with mental health, substance abuse issues, what's a good way for people to reach out in the non-traditional sense? Maybe?
Listen, I put a post up last week on Facebook that said, listen, I will talk to you, no judgment. I will help you find resources, even if it's resources that Recovery Unplugged can't provide, or if you just need somebody to listen to what you're going through. You can find me on Facebook at Barry Ryman. You can message Recovery Unplugged. You can call SAMHSA, which is a Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. Their number is 800, oh crap, I just went blank. You can look it up, SAMHSA. 800-662-4357 would be their number. Phone a friend, talk to your sponsor, be on Zoom meetings, do whatever you can to stay in touch with people.
So basically today, Barry, we covered anxiety, depression, self-care, Zoom meetings, social distancing, healthy habits, feeling disconnected, how we're personally handling the coronavirus here, Zoom meetings versus regular meetings. Do you have anything else that you'd like to cover today? We got a lot of friends out there, and we just want to say we're very grateful and appreciative that you've tuned into this.
Yeah, and I miss people. By nature, I'm a very social person, and part of, if I have to get vulnerable a little bit, my biggest struggle has really been being away from and interacting with people, actually being in the office and, bothering people in the admissions department and, all the little things that I think that we take for granted, right? Seeing my parents, right? I haven't seen my parents in weeks. My parents haven't seen their grandchildren in weeks. We really need to look out for the older generation at this point. Some of this stuff really pisses me off, right? Spring break in Fort Lauderdale, having Corona parties and reading about, millennials that are walking around licking doorknobs. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I did.
Come on,
But this is the same thing that gets us into trouble, Barry, and this is that the rules don't apply to me. I'm different and I'm selfish. So I'm just going to do what I want, and I'm forgetting that I'm putting other people at risk when I do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I've even heard about, big AA meetings getting together, despite people saying this is a really bad idea.
It's irresponsible.
It's irresponsible to do that.
It is irresponsible.
Right?
What are you going to get out of doing a gathering of more than 10 people?
Right. Exactly.
What's going to come from that?
Absolutely nothing. That's stroking your ego at that point.
It's beyond me.
So we should all just take these precautions seriously. We should do our part to get through this, right? And we will get through it, and I think we'll get through it a lot quicker if everybody just buckles down and does what they need to do, right?
100%.
So phone a friend. What do you got, Barry? Closing thoughts on this?
Remember that what we're going through right now, like I mentioned before, is a temporary situation. Not as temporary as we would like. As addicts, we are so accustomed to the concept of instant gratification. This is where we practice delayed gratification. This is where we understand that, one of the oldest sayings in recovery, this too shall pass. There's another saying in Narcotics Anonymous, don't leave 5 minutes before the miracle happens, right? You've heard that saying before, right?
I've heard that.
That if you choose, and it's a choice, but if you make that choice to self-destruct over a feeling that's temporary, you will have left 5 minutes before that feeling went away and you made it to the other side. No matter how bad you're feeling today, tomorrow's a new day. And if you wake up feeling crappy again tomorrow, then the next day you run the risk of actually feeling better, right? That crappiness doesn't stay with us forever.
It doesn't, and that's good news. Missy says Zoom meetings have saved her this week. Amen, sister. Tanis, we love you. Anything else to close down with, Barry?
I'm fresh out of, I think I talked for a long time.
You did talk for a long time. This is great.
I could do this for longer just to be out of the house and stuff,
Yeah.
but, I'm hungry, so I haven't had
I'm
dinner
hungry
yet.
too. Let's go eat, Barry.
We
We can't eat together.
We'll eat over
we'll eat
Zoom.
separately. Right, we'll eat over Zoom.
Yeah, we can
Thanks,
do
you guys, for tuning in. If you want to get with us on Sunday night, we're having a back porch session Sunday night from our friend Valerie up at our Nashville facility. She's going to stream from her house with her boyfriend, so that should be really cool.
She's great.
Then next Tuesday, I have my friend Nasa coming in to play for Tune Up Tuesday. She's wonderful. She's actually a Latin recording artist. She's incredible. So she'll be my guest speaker Tuesday night. We have Meditation Mondays. We have a full lineup next week. Ian Jackson's going to be the Ask a Therapist guy next Thursday from Nashville.
From Nashville.
So make sure you guys tune in and follow us on social media, and you'll get all the updates when we send them out.
I bet you he talks about golf a little bit too.
I bet you he does. Hey guys, Shannon, you're so welcome for this. Stay safe, stay sober, every guys.
Oh, what was that?
Smoker's cough.
Was that a...
That was
Hold on.
not the corona. We love you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Good night, Carl.
Good night, Barry.
Good night.